Hello, and welcome to Concordia Presents the Walrus Talks, It's Electric. I'm Jennifer Hollett. I'm the Executive Director of the Walrus, and I am your host for this evening. We are thrilled to be here in person in Toronto at the Isabel Theatre, as well as streaming live at thewalrus.ca. So hello to the over 500 households who have registered for our live stream. And we encourage you all, whether you're here in the room or online in your own room, to share this conversation on social media. So take pics or share your favorite quotes, tag us at The Walrus, and our hashtag is hashtag Walrus Talks. Hashtag also allows us to connect this room with our online audience. I'd like to start by acknowledging the land that we're on. We're gathered within the bounds of Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is also the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Today, Toronto is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We are really honored at the Walrus to carry on a long tradition of storytelling, and we encourage you all to take a moment to reflect on the land that you're on, whether you're joining us in person or online. The Walrus started as an optimistic project over 2 decades ago to foster conversation across Canada. These conversations are complex and oh so necessary, so for us they take place in many forms, online at thewalrus.ca, in print, on newsstands, or by subscribing to The Walrus. You can also listen to our podcasts or take part in events like this one. And this work is powered by our donors, our supporters, and our partners. So thank you all for being here with us in conversation, and to our longtime partner and friend, Concordia University, for working with us on tonight's talks. To tell us more, please welcome Graham Carr, President and Vice Chancellor of Concordia University.
Great to see you.
Thanks, Jen, one of my favorite Concordia alumni. And it's great to be back. C'est toujours un plaisir d'être ici à Toronto. As I reached in to pull this out of my pocket, I don't know about you, but I'm still at the stage when I reach into my pocket, I worry I'm going to pull a surgical mask out by mistake. It's great to have all the Concordia alumni here in person or watching online. For those of you who don't know much about Concordia, we are about to celebrate our 50th anniversary as a university, starting in June 2024 to 2025. We are currently the top-ranked Canadian university under 50 and second in North America under 50, and we're going to enjoy that for one more year. But I'm not worried about the future because we're doing very well in other global rankings, top 100 in the world for the work we do to address the UN SDGs and also for our commitment to ESG. And this is a special year starting at Concordia, and some of you who are Concordia alumni may know that last Friday we made an announcement that we have a new co-chancellor who's with us this evening, Gina Cody. Gina, please stand up. Gina, of course, a graduate of Concordia, longtime benefactor of Concordia, will share the co-chancellor duties for the balance of this calendar year and then become Concordia's chancellor in January of 2025 as we move forward in the celebrations of our university. We are a large university with more than 50,000 students coming from over 150 countries. And despite what you may have heard or read in the media in the fall, we're still open for business for students coming from the rest of Canada. Yes, indeed. And in fact, we've put some attractive scholarship funds in place to support those students who want to come and get a great education in Montreal. And I won't get political at all. I'll simply say that Concordia remains a great university to come to for the quality of its academic programs. And I have to say it, Toronto, because Montreal is still the best city in North America in which to be a university student. And one of the big reasons why students choose Concordia and come to Montreal is because of our commitments to tackling climate change, and that fits in with what we're doing here this evening. Those commitments include our commitment as a university to redirect our foundation investments to support sustainability initiatives and social impact initiatives. It includes our commitment made a year ago in April to physically decarbonize the 80 buildings on our 2 campuses with a view in the long run to becoming an institution which actually generates power that can be redirected back into the neighborhoods around our 2 campuses. But we're also this evening here to hear from some of our researchers and a great lineup of other speakers to talk about the importance of electrification as a strategy to address climate change going forward. And we have a fantastic group of speakers here tonight. I just want to indulge me for 1 second to signal, in particular, my friend Chris Henderson, who was previously executive director of Indigenous Clean Energy and who's become a great partner of Concordia University in the largest research grant in Canada on electrification. Aphrodite Salas, professor in the School of Journalism, who's doing truly extraordinary work in collaboration with Indigenous communities in northern Quebec. And Karim Zaghib, who is known worldwide for his extraordinary contributions to battery development and who is affectionately known by our Minister of Economy and Innovation in Quebec and by Pierre Fitzgibbon and by François-Philippe Champagne, the Minister of Industry, Science and Economic Development in Canada, as Mr. Battery. So please join me in welcoming all of our speakers this evening. And I want to thank Jen and the Walrus once again for the opportunity to be here. And I am looking forward to the night ahead. Thank you all.
So not only am I a proud graduate of Concordia, I'm second generation. My dad went to Concordia back when it was the colleges. And this morning I was wearing my Concordia sweatshirt from 1994, different color, not on brand. But what's so funny about this sweatshirt, not only that I still have it, but my sister likes to remind me, you bought that for me as a gift. It's actually mine. I want it back. So always proud to represent Concordia with the family. You are in for a treat tonight. One of the perks of my job is I get to play host and learn a lot from our talkers. And this is a topic that we're hearing and learning more about in the news, but there's a lot of buzzwords. I think we often get one narrative, and we're going to go deeper and more expansive this evening. Canada has joined over 120 countries in committing to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Gosh, I'm like 2050 is tomorrow, but it also seems very far away. Can we even get this done? Well, the work is underway, and as we work to achieve this critical target in our industries, transportation systems, institutions, businesses, and homes, understanding the progress, but also the potential of electrification has become more important than ever before. Tonight, we have 7 speakers, 7 minutes each, to share innovations and challenges involved in this work, electrifying society, and the social impact of an equitable, decarbonized future ahead. Tonight, we'll be hearing from Emma Jarratt, Executive Editor, Electric Autonomy, Dr. Karim Zaghib, CEO, Voltage, and Professor, Chemicals and Materials Engineering at Concordia University, Phil DeLuna, Chief Carbon Scientist and Head of Engineering, Deep Sky, Danielle Breton, President and CEO, Electric Mobility Canada, Nick Martin, Director of Electrification, the Transition Accelerator, Chris Henderson, Founding Executive Director, Indigenous Clean Energy, and Aphrodite Salas, Journalist and Professor at Concordia University. Thank you all for joining us.
I think I'm a lot shorter than most of the speakers. Good evening, everyone. My name's Emma Jarratt. I'm the Executive Editor of Electric Autonomy, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening. We're talking about a big subject tonight, It's a topic with polarizing views, political theater, and tons of misinformation. It's new and quickly changing. And there are a lot of heightened emotions wrapped up in it. Excitement and anger, anxiety and pride, fear and hope. On the surface, electrification can appear just a binary decision, to buy an electric vehicle or to not buy an electric vehicle. But it's much more than that. I've yet to be presented with a sector or population immune from the electrification revolution. That's because electrification is a euphemism for a completely reimagined society and way of living in every part of the world. It impacts our mental and physical health, our modes of transportation, of people and goods, our energy usage, the way we heat and cool our homes, grow our food, the jobs we and perhaps our children will have, and the environment we rely on. It's a major evolution that's touching every industry and human being. It's also a reminder of the unknown future facing us as a species. 65 million years ago, the world's dinosaurs went extinct due to a major climate event. Just a small handful of animals survived: birds, lizards, and crocodiles. What did these species have in common? They all had small footprints on the environment that supported them, and they are all highly adaptable. Human nature is really interesting. We, as a collective, resist and fear changing our habits, even if it's in our best interest. For example, instead of going out to a gas station a couple times a week to fill up our cars, as we've been doing for the last 100 years, we're now being asked to take our car in the evening, plug it into a wall outlet, and have it fuel up or charge while we sleep. Sometimes we may need to detour from our day to plug them in a public place. We might have to wait around for a bit for the car to get enough juice. And even though we have all done this exact routine with our cell phones, for me, in defiance of all safety measures, my home charger is beside my head in my bed. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been out reporting and stopped to buy an overpriced Starbucks coffee just to fill up my phone as well. To translate this low-maintenance cell phone ritual to a vehicle is deemed an appalling and unacceptable risk by many. So we have a lot to learn from crocodilian adaptation if we're going to survive a transition to electrification. Despite the rather bleak prospect that, depending on our ability to adapt or not, humans could be the new dinosaurs, at its core, electrification is a movement rooted in optimism and striving for a better future. Canada has a national mandate to have no new pure combustion light-duty vehicle sales by 2035, with interim targets of 20% zero-emission vehicle sales by 2026 and 60% by 2030. To support this, 7 of our 10 provinces and 2 of our 3 territories now have provincial or territorial EV sales rebates. We also have a federal rebate that's available to all prospective EV buyers. Canada is working to phase out coal burning by 2030, with the result of having a goal of a net zero electrical grid by 2035. And we are contemplating regulations for 100% of medium and heavy-duty vehicles to be zero emission by 2040. Is this all a tailpipe dream? Many people think so. But for the full year of 2023, market penetration for zero-emission light-duty vehicles hit 10.8% in Canada. That's up from 1% in 2017. In 2023 as well, 79.4% of our national electricity supply came from non-emitting sources, according to Statistics Canada. We also increased our battery storage capabilities by almost 9-fold, going from 11 megawatts in 2016 to 92 megawatts in 2023. On the flip side, our energy usage is projected to double between 2021 and 2050. So even with the gains we've already seen, Canada has a big mountain to climb in the next 11 years to meet its climate targets. Today, Canada holds some of the world's leading IQ and IP in sustainable technologies. Just look at the speaker roster for any clues about how we're doing on that front. We've also likely been following the wave of manufacturing that's onshoring from coast to coast. And there is sometimes a rare and admittedly grudging alignment between policymakers and industries when it comes to decarbonizing. But none of this should be taken for granted. Despite the billions of dollars of private industry and public purse money that's been poured into this transition, there's still a large percentage of the population that heartily disagrees with the direction scientists, activists, government, and some industry are pushing. The transition of our transportation methods, our economy, and our grid to non-emitting electric power is far from a sure thing, and we can't forget that. Take a look around the room. Whether you came here tonight alone and armed with knowledge about electrification, or with a group that's full of questions about the whys and how it will all work, you are among crocodiles. As much as I would like to believe the description of this evening's discussion about understanding electrification being, quote, no longer a choice but a necessity, I know that outside this forum, that sentiment is a hotly debated opinion, not reality. The opportunity tonight to hear from some of the leading voices in Canada's sustainability space is a unique privilege. But the knowledge we gain needs to leave this room and be paid forward to our respective communities. That's the most helpful thing we can do for the electrification movement: amplify information and sow it through our networks. We can't force someone to change their habits, but we can give those who don't agree with or don't appreciate the necessity of electrification more information, so they have an opportunity and a reason to continue to consider which side of the adaptability ledger they want to be on. I'm so looking forward to hearing from the rest of the speakers. People often say that journalists write the first draft of history, and it's truly my pleasure and privilege to have a front row seat to this watershed time of electrification. Thank you for your time this evening.
Bonsoir, good evening. Let me begin by saying that English is my third language, so bear with me. I am Karim Zaghib. I am CEO of Voltage at Concordia University. Research project focus on electrification of the society. Now I was born with asthma, condition made worse by carbon emissions. And maybe this was fate, the thing that led me to careers in decarbonizations. Because I am a specialist in electrochemistry, this is the science of batteries and how we generate power with electricity. You have probably not heard much about electrochemistry or the science of battery. Neither did my parents. They would have preferred that I be medical doctors. But electrochemistry is important to our daily life. Most of you have a bit of electrochemistry with you tonight. You have the work of my scientific mentors, John Goodenough, in your hand. He developed the lithium-ion batteries, the rechargeable power sources in our phones. Electrochemistry and battery are important to daily life. And the good news that we know we can produce electricity easily in Canada. But storage is the problem, and this is the key for decarbonizations. Let me explain. Imagine a version of battery in your phone as a broader system for storing electric power. The electric grid reaches across a building and cities. With this grid, we could store supply of energy, sharing and when we need is the most. This capture and release strategy is why electrochemical storage is important. The Voltage Research Project was awarded a total of $230 million in funding. And yes, we want to find solution for electrochemical energy storage. But our goal is to connect electrification research to the real world. To go beyond the lab and connect to the innovation, commerce, industry, here's some of the projects that we have started. We redesigning battery for electric vehicles, making them for more cost-effective, related less and important materials. The goal is to make EV car more attractive to consumers and then address the clean production of batteries in Canada. We are creating better building design using solar powers. This means buildings that keep heat with the solar-powered walls and roofing. Imagine a building that will be able to produce its own energy without adding the carbon emission. The concrete industry is one of the biggest sources of CO2 emissions. We are working with the construction industry to make cleaner concrete by removing carbon from the air and using electricity instead of fossil fuel. We're using digital tools and data from smart devices to help Jarratt, a company, measure finance institutions, better manage energy consumptions. They want to lead the way in making building greener and extend this message to schools and communities and the partners. Like constructions, the aerospace industry looking at how to make plane and space travel more sustainable and less harmful to the environment. We are looking at the way to change air travel. Can we use mix of electricity and fuel, or using special turbo engine, or finally go all electric? Finally, we are creating new gaming tools that cities can use to get input from citizens about urban planning decisions. They are just a few of our projects, and we have just begun. Voltage research is not just about batteries. This project reflects all aspects of electrification. It is about people, human behavior, and change about industry, constructions, communities, and life. It's about indigenous voice in energy. It's about architectures, solar power systems, and urban planning. And well, yes, for my own research interest, of course, electrification is very much about batteries too. At Voltage, we are not only scientific, we are leading sustainable progress. Key element of everything we do in our living lab concept. This is action-based research working directly on research problem with communities and industry partners. Living lab means real time and real life applications. Because the task decarbonization is urgent, I am passionate about the work about the future of electrifications. My father, who still believes I should be a doctor, tells me, okay, so you may have made a mistake in choosing this battery, but at least you did with the confidence. My story began with the battery, but it means so much more for all of us. At the heart of Voltage mission is the belief that science and technology should be addressed need of both society and the planet. My hope in the next time you charge your phone, you remember the potential that we have. I hope that you remember Voltage, we're working on it. And yes, it's electric, it's green. Thank you very much, merci beaucoup.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Phil DeLuna. I'm the Chief Carbon Scientist and Head of Engineering at Deep Sky, which is a carbon removals project developer. I am so honored to be sharing this stage today with incredible co-speakers and panelists who are inspiring us with their stories of how electrification can change our world, improve our climate, and make this economy more robust and resilient. But there's a big gap still. There are large sectors and parts of our economy that are difficult or even impossible to electrify today. Steel, cement production, aviation fuel, fertilizers. These are things that we do not yet have the technology to fully address with electrification. So what do we do with them? We don't yet have batteries that can carry people across the Atlantic in a plane. Maybe one day, but not today. Emissions that come from cement, the world's largest man-made material by volume, actually occur from the curing of the cement, from the chemical reaction as it hardens, not from burning fossil fuels in order to produce it. And so if we have increasing populations and the increasing cost of living and we need to build more housing for people, the concrete, that cement, that actually creates CO2 emissions. So what do? How do we electrify the unelectrifiable? That's what I'll talk to you about today. But first, to set the context on the stage, we all know climate change is really bad. Last year was a record-breaking year in terms of warmth. 2023, the worst on record. Oceans were boiling, forests were on fire. I don't need to belabor the point. But there's something even scarier that we often don't talk about when it comes to climate, and that's the delay, the time lag between temperature rise and emission. To explain this, I will liken it to a global pandemic, both of which global crises that have the potential to completely halt our economies, both of which know no borders. A CO2 molecule that gets emitted around the world, we feel that impact here. A virus that starts across the globe, we feel that impact here if it spreads. Both have lagging indicators. Just as death is a lagging indicator of infection, temperature rise is a lagging indicator of emission. The only difference is one happens in 2 weeks, the other can take 10 to 50 years. 10 to 50 years. That's how long it takes maximum warming to occur after CO2 has entered the atmosphere. This means that the warming that we just experienced, that record warmth in 2023, is from emissions that went into the atmosphere before I was born. That also means that if we stop emitting everything today, turn the taps off, shut it off, we still have 10 to 50 years of baked-in pipeline warming to come. And so I want to talk about the net in net zero, and I'll give you my patented 5-point plan to save the world. Step 1, we need to protect what we have. We need to plant more trees. We need to stop cutting down the Amazon to make room for cattle to grow beef. Step 2, we need renewables everywhere. And already, renewable production in terms of energy is about 30% of global production. And it's growing, but we need to grow faster. We heard about how batteries are playing a huge role. What do we do when the sun does not shine or the wind does not blow? We need long-term energy storage, not just from the hour to hour, but the day-to-day, the week-to-week, the season-to-season, in order for us to really fully take advantage of those renewables. Step 3, once we have those green electrons, we need to electrify everything. That's electric vehicles in the road, that's heat pumps in our homes. Step 4, we have to tackle these hard-to-abate sectors by trying to completely change the way we produce the goods and products, the things that we use for our quality of life. We have to find ways to electrify what we can. And then finally, step 5, we have to remove carbon from the atmosphere using electricity. So I work for a company called Deep Sky. And what we do is we build massive plants, big fans that are powered by renewable electricity, suck in air, separate it with filters so that we take the CO2, we compress and we liquefy it so we can put it back underground where it's safely stored. We are an oil and gas company in reverse. Oil and gas companies take carbon out of the ground, they extract energy from it, typically in the form of combustion, and the carbon goes into the air. We take carbon out of the air, we use renewable electricity to purify, liquefy it, and then we put it underground. Why do we do this? Because we got into this mess by taking carbon out of the earth and putting it into the air. It kind of makes sense to reverse it. We have to take it out of the air and put it back underground. Thankfully, Canada is probably one of the best places in the world to do this. We have all of the natural resources imaginable to make this a reality. 1, we have enough storage in Western Canada to completely reverse climate change. The geology in Western Canada can actually store every single ton that humanity has put into the atmosphere since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. 2, we have a relatively clean grid. Electrification and clean electricity underpins everything, anything that we do in this transformation. We have hydroelectricity in Quebec, in Manitoba, and British Columbia. We have land and space to build renewables responsibly. We can do it. And so what we're doing at Deep Sky, what I believe this industry of carbon removal is a way to tackle hard to abate and impossible to electrify sectors. How do you do that? You don't electrify the production. You electrify the removal of the carbon in the air. And that is how we can get to net zero. That is the net in net zero. As a species, we have set targets over and over again, but emissions continue to rise. We know what we need to do, and yet we fail constantly at implementing it. We have very little time left for what needs to be done. But we also know that as time continues and we run out, electrification, while critical and important, won't be enough if we don't act now. And that's why we have to start developing these new technologies. We have to do things like removing CO2 from the air. And finally, the last thing that I will leave us with is a story of my own upbringing. I grew up in Windsor, Ontario. I'm an immigrant from the Philippines. I moved here when I was 5 years old. My dad is an auto worker. My mom worked customer service. I've lived in a city that felt a downturn, the 2008 economic recession, when multiple auto plants were shut down. My dad lost his job. I know what it's like to live in a community that is experiencing and is reliant on only one industry and what happens when that industry fades away. That exact same thing is happening today in the oil and gas sector. What better way to repurpose the skills of taking carbon out from underground, but then by reversing it to clean up the mess that we're in? Thank you.
Hi everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Daniel Breton. I am the President and CEO of Electric Mobility Canada. Let's start with a question. Raise your hand, everybody who came here by driving an electric car. So you are thought leaders, and I see the percentage of people driving an electric car, which is approximately, would say, 10%. So currently, sales of electric vehicles, we're at approximately 10% of EV sales in Canada. I grew up near refineries, so I was witness when I was a kid of explosions, spills, and fires. So obviously that had an impact on me. 50 years ago, what happened 50 years ago? We had an oil crisis. So I remember back then I started my ecology lessons, courses in high school, and we're talking about ways to get rid of our dependence on fossil fuel. And back then, we were talking about electric cars and hydrogen cars. I remember those. I remember those days. I was reading Popular Mechanics. For those of you who remember Popular Mechanics. And we're talking about, electric cars and flying cars as well. That didn't happen. And this is something that really had an impact on me because I said, we have to do better than this. 40 years ago, I was a student. I was assembling Monte Carlos at GM in Sainte-Thérèse. Obviously, the plant closed ever since then. And between the two, I work at a refinery, and the refinery closed a long time ago. So when we're talking about, energy transition, we have to talk about job transition as well. You've mentioned that. That's a great argument because I know we have one of our members, which is Unifor, because EMC has many members. We have 160 members who range from car manufacturers to research center to union, mining companies and everything. And Concordia University is a member. And what we are aiming to do is to make sure that not only do we decarbonize the economy, we decarbonize transportation, but we create well-paid, sustainable jobs in the process. Now, let's go to 1994, when I met Karim Zaghib. We've known each other for 30 years. So we started discussing, and I remember when I spoke about electric vehicles in Quebec, and Karim did as well, some people were thinking that I was crazy. And I remember a journalist said to me last year, he said, everybody thought you were crazy. I said, but you were right. You're still crazy, but you were right. So the thing is that things are moving forward in the right direction. In 2012, I was environment minister in Quebec. I was in charge of the electric mobility strategy for the government of Quebec. But while things have moved in the right direction in many ways, what I've seen in the past, I would say, year and a half or two, is a lot of backlash regarding electric mobility, And when I saw this, independent, complex, fact-based, my God, I almost had a heart attack. I've never written an op-ed, and I've done many in different media over the past decades to talk about issues. I studied climate change in university. So I would write about stuff that I know about, But nowadays, I read all these op-eds in the Globe and Mail, in the National Post, in Journal de Montréal, in La Presse about electric vehicles, and the level of misunderstanding, misinformation, disinformation is staggering. I'll give you an example. In 2016, I wrote a book about electric vehicles. I had 10 myths about EVs. This week, I'm finishing a new book that's going to be out in the fall. It's 50 myths about EVs. That's how crazy it's gotten. There's a lot of backlash these days, and it's becoming a culture war. You know, if you drive an electric car, you're a left-wing liberal living in the city. What do you call them? Hipster? Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, I mean, I go to the House of Commons on a regular basis. I'm going to be there in 2 days to talk about energy transition. And I get these questions from elected officials who obviously either don't have a clue what they're talking about, or they're not interested under the political game, or all of the above. So it's not easy these days to talk about electric mobility, electrification of the economy. The grid won't hold, as you know. Electric cars all explode. I mean, they're worse for the environment. You've heard that, I'm sure. And I get that from people from the right wing and people from the left wing as well. So the level of misinformation, the level of discussion, the level of insults that I get on social media, I mean, I get 5 to 10 insults a day on social media when it comes to electric vehicles. And I get questions from media. Today, CTV did an interview. So would you like to comment on the fact that EV sales are going down? Well, actually, they're not. So I came up with the answer, with the data. And it's as if the person was unhappy that I was correcting her. Last week, I was talking to someone from Radio-Canada. They said, well, would you like to comment on the fact that the price of charging an electric vehicle in Quebec is going to go up? Well, actually, it's not. So this is the type, I do about 200 to 250 interviews a year across Canada. And these days, not only social media, but regular media is doing a crappy job when we're talking about energy transition electric cars. I'm sorry to say this in front of you guys. You might be surprised, but the truth of the matter is that this is a big problem because the narrative has become very, very negative. I'll give you an example, another example. I did an interview at 4 this afternoon. Nouveau, which is a French-speaking TV network. And they said, well, we heard about the Northvolt project, battery project, and we hear that it's going to be a big problem. I said, no, it's not. I mean, the government handled it really badly, but it's a great project for the environment. So we have to find some nuance, look at the facts, but it's really complicated these days to get the facts through. So at EMC, we pride ourselves in coming up with good answers, good reflection, good discussion between members with partners, such as Karim, such as many others, to make sure that we get the right information through. And I'm very happy that Electric Autonomy does such a great job, at talking about electric cars and the future of mobility, because we don't have enough of those media that can cut through the crap. I'm sorry to say this, It's not axe the tax, it's cut the crap. So we need the support from people like you. We need to work together on this because I thought naively 10 years ago that by 2020 I would have nothing to say and everybody would have understood. Well, we have a long way to go. Thanks a lot.
Hello, my name is Nick Martin, and in my day job, I'm the Director of Electrification for the Transition Accelerator. I spend a lot of my time thinking about the role of electricity in building a prosperous and economically competitive future for Canada by achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. In other words, I think about how we can produce electricity without creating emissions, and I also think how we can use a lot more of it to decarbonize our other energy needs. I also volunteer with a new organization based here in Toronto called Toronto Home Retrofits that is dedicated to helping decarbonize the city's homes. And so tonight I just want to talk about something that really connects these two parts of my life together, I want to talk about how electrification is the most viable way for eliminating emissions from our homes. And I want to draw attention to that word eliminate in what I just said, because I think it's important to make clear that we must eliminate, not just reduce, emissions from our homes. The best science and the best information that we have today says we must achieve net zero emissions by 2050 to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. There's not a lot of wiggle room when it comes to net zero. Zero is zero. Zero is none. Zero is not less. So to get to net zero, we can't just produce less emissions from our homes. We must produce zero emissions from our homes. So if we're in the mindset of not just reducing, but eliminating emissions from our homes, what is the best, most viable way to do it? Well, it might surprise everyone in here for me to say that the answer is electricity. And if you're listening, yeah, there's audible gasps in the room. But it's true. Full electrification is the most viable way to eliminate emissions from our homes. And I say that because electrifying our homes is a pathway to net zero that meets what we like to call at the Transition Accelerator, the 3 C's. It's capable, it's credible, and it's compelling. I'll start with capable. Electrifying our homes is a capable net zero pathway because it will actually lead to emissions elimination. It might seem obvious, but when we turn on and use our electrical devices, they're not spewing out a bunch of exhaust or air pollutants or greenhouse gases. Using electricity for all of our home's energy needs completely eliminates on-site emissions. And then as the electricity grid itself moves towards net zero, even the electricity that will be used in our homes will not be contributing to emissions. In this way, electrification is capable of meeting our net zero goals. Next is credible. Electrifying our homes is a credible net zero pathway because it's not some new, high-tech, futuristic concept. The technology to electrify our homes exists today, and we've been using it for a long time. Our home's biggest energy need is typically keeping the place warm, and today in Canada, over 6 million homes already use electricity for heating. Electric water heaters and stoves are also common appliances across the country. This stuff is not new. But I will admit that electrifying our homes has not always been compelling. I don't know about everyone else here, but when I've been apartment hunting, a big negative has always been seeing a bunch of electric baseboard heaters along the walls when I walk into it. When I see those things, I would immediately start thinking, oh, if I get this place, it's going to be cold. It's going to be really expensive, my utility bills. I'm also not a huge fan of those electric coil stoves. You guys know what I'm talking about? I've scrubbed way too many pots and pans with sticky burn-on food because those things just stay super hot after you turn them off, unlike a gas stove, for example. Luckily, electrifying our homes has become a lot more compelling as technology has advanced substantially and we better understand the benefits of electrification. Today, we have really, really, really good heat pumps. And if you haven't heard of heat pumps, they're not new, but they're just air conditioners running in reverse. We've had air conditioners for quite a while. They move heat from outside our homes to the inside. And because they're moving heat instead of creating it, they are incredibly efficient, making them cheaper to run than most other heating options. In the past, this technology has struggled to move enough heat in cold Canadian winters, but heat pump technology has accelerated in the last few years with new models becoming more capable and more efficient at even the low temperatures, making them good options for most of Canada's colder weather today. And since heat pumps are just air conditioners, they also provide space cooling for our homes, something that's becoming more and more important as the summers become longer and hotter with climate change. Finally, on the cooking front, induction electric stoves have also improved tremendously, providing a cooking experience that's a lot like a gas stove without degrading the indoor air quality of our homes. Now, just because electrifying our homes is capable, credible, and compelling does not mean it's going to be super easy and without obstacles. There are important challenges that will require creative solutions, including ensuring our electric grids can handle all this additional electrification and ensuring an equitable transition by making sure these technologies are more affordable and accessible to all households. These are critical issues being worked on by many smart and dedicated people and organizations. There are also issues that will materialize once electrification is happening at scale. They do not prevent us from taking action today. So I want to end by saying that if this is something you care about, you can take action today. You can, of course, fully electrify your home if you're in a position to do so. As I said, the technology exists. But many of us might not be in a position to fully electrify our homes immediately. It generally makes most economic sense to electrify when existing fossil fuel-based equipment needs to be replaced, which is not all that often. It's also much harder for those of us who rent and don't have full control over the type of energy our homes use. But whether or not you can electrify your home today, you can certainly do two other things. You can learn and you can talk. First, learn more about how we can electrify our homes. Understand the options, understand the benefits. Nerd out on all these new and improved technologies. And then after learning, talk about it. And I think I can hear my girlfriend in the audience groan because I might talk about this stuff a little bit too much at our social gatherings. But it is a major barrier to eliminating emissions from our homes today is that many people are simply unaware of the options to decarbonize their homes. And these options and that these options can make their homes healthier and more comfortable. Helping folks become more aware is critical as home energy decisions often have a huge status quo bias. If our gas furnace breaks, we typically just replace it with another gas furnace. And once that decision is made, that furnace may be locked into place for the next 20 to 30 years. So talk about it with friends, family, neighbors, landlords. Make them aware that there are other, better options so when it comes time to make these energy decisions, they are equipped to make the choice to electrify. That's the model that organizations like Toronto Home Retrofits are pursuing, helping neighbors talk to neighbors how to electrify their homes. So if you want to take action, talk to groups like them, talk to me, of course, anything like that. Learn, talk, electrify. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chris Henderson. I'm the founding executive director of Indigenous Clean Energy and also the curator of a global dialogue platform on energy transition called Transformative Energy, which will launch next month. As I reveled experiencing yesterday's solar eclipse in the zone of totality, I thought to myself, what does that mean for my remarks today? Is it going to be blue skies? Or will there be periods of darkness or sometimes hues of gray? My optimistic self hopes for blue skies, but my fearful alter ego is also speaking to me. There's too much talk with energy transition to combat climate change, but also to have an abundant energy future that may be a technology fix, that it might be incremental, that it might be a switch out for the way we consume energy now, the way we could in the future. But I don't think that recognizes the reality of what energy is in our lives. I don't think it recognizes that we are all under colonialization. Now, I work with Indigenous communities around the country who become some of the major leaders in clean energy. But they've done it under a colonial history they're trying to change. But colonialism is not just one of colonial powers. Colonialism affects gender. It affects youth. It certainly affects the generations to come. What I've learned in helping Indigenous communities become the second largest asset holder of renewable energy in Canada is that we have to center the transition we're going through with a people agenda. And that systemic change is fundamentally to say, how do we not simply have a domination of the energy system where Shell or BP or large utilities control it to Meta and Google controlling it? Because that actually is part of the path we're on. What we actually want to do is not be preoccupied about reliability and cost. What we have to be preoccupied about is what does energy get us? What does energy really value us? There's an episode in the sitcom Seinfeld when there's a Russian author coming here to New York City to write a book. And Jerry tells Elaine that Tolstoy's book was not named War and Peace, which is the best book title ever and very topical in these times, but it's war. What's it good for? Absolutely nothing. Hilarity ensues. So I ask you, what's energy good for? And And so therefore, I think we are not moving as fast as we have been able to on climate change, or as fast as we need to on energy transition, because the people-centering decision-making, governance, ownership of that new future is not in place. If Indigenous communities can own almost 20% of Canada's electricity generating infrastructure, almost all renewable as they do now, could you? Could we move to a more democratic system that values resilience of local economies, fairness, justice, and even things like healthcare? The community of Nain, Labrador is on the east coast of our country. It's an Inuit community. It's reliant on diesel for its heating. It's reliant for diesel for its power. That's shipped by barge up from Corner Brook. When I asked the community there, when they were trying to go through an energy transition, what was the alternative to their heat? They said, well, we can buy some diesel fuel, we can buy some wood, which is expensive, as you might expect, in a near tundra area. I said, well, could we just look at what you really want? They said, no, what we want is healthier air in our homes, and we're willing to pay for different kinds of technologies that get us there. So we're talking energy, and I also joke in Ottawa, there are two people that know what an electron is, and I'm one of them. You know, we need a colossal change. When Jonathan Swift wrote his satirical novel, Gulliver's Travel, Gulliver traveled in different parts, including to the land of giants, which was called Brobdingnagian. I've always wanted to use that word in a speech, and thank you for letting me do that. If we want to have something Brobdingnagian, we must recognize that energy is intertwined with every facet of our life, but put people at the center. So therefore, how we plan energy, it's not a decision for the Ontario government, or the Canadian government, or IESO, or OPG, or Hydro One, organizations I know because I live and breathe with them. It's about you. It's about how you're involved in the decision of which path we follow. Because, in fact, it's for you. And if you want to say, well, I may pay more for that particular form of energy because it helps the planet more, or it makes my family healthier, well, that's a rational decision, but it's not the way the domination of energy colonialism works today. Changing this is going to be incredibly difficult because we have to aspire to be ambitious. But I would say take your lessons from the first peoples of this Turtle Island, what you may call Canada. Because Indigenous communities have said, we want to value ecology. We want to value our own economies. We want to value our own benefits from meeting the needs that we need met, preferably with local energy. I kind of say, well, maybe we have the 100-mile diet in nutritional terms. How about the 100-mile clean energy diet? So what I am working now is to move forward with a transformative energy foundation to change those pillars on which energy transition occurs. Because if we don't do that, I think we will bump along and have unintended consequences that are negative and intended consequences that are also negative. Transformative energy is intersectional. It's socially inclusive. It's ecologically centered and economically value additive. Have you ever seen those words talked about in an energy future? But they should, because it's about you. Building an electric future that is design-centered, embraces creativity, places a premium on just and restorative relationships, and is truly regenerative clean energy is the future. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the zone of totality of electrification. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Aphrodite Salas. I am a journalist and a professor at Concordia University. Simeone Nalukturuk was just a kid when the police came to his village and shot all their dogs. It was the 1960s, Inukjuak, in the Arctic region of Quebec. And the community had been told that Inuit sled dogs were a danger, that they had diseases, Both reasons were later declared questionable. On the day of the killings in Inukjuak, Simeone's father couldn't bring all the dogs to the dump where the RCMP were waiting. So he told Simeone to bring the last two. And it was a wretched scene, one that Simeone would never forget. Many years later, in 2019, the government of Canada would apologize to the Inuit for their role in the killing of hundreds, if not thousands, of sled dogs. But the damage was done. Inuit are nomadic, so being in a village like Inukjuak was not natural. The Canadian government effectively created these settlements, and with the killing of the dogs, forced relocations, residential schools, and other colonial policies, the Inuit were pretty much forced to stay put. For heat and power, they started getting yearly shipments of diesel fuel, which continue to this day. It's dirty and it's dangerous, and community leaders in Inukjuak wanted to find another way of powering their town. And that is what I went to speak to Simeone about when I was in Inukjuak in 2021. He was the mayor, and I was there for a journalism project focusing on the community's climate leadership. So I planned to talk about Inukjuak's new hydro project that would take them from being 100% dependent on diesel to 100% reliant on renewable energy. But Simeone had other things to tell me. He talked about the killing of the dogs and other policies as tools to assimilate the Inuit and weaken their link to the land and to animals. And he saw his dogs being shot to death. He survived residential school. He understood the trauma, and he told me about it in relation to the energy project. He said, "We are still here, and we are hopefully going to make things go right." And they have. The community has found a way to stop the reliance on diesel and create clean energy through an innovative run-of-river hydro project that they've just completed. Now, it hasn't been easy. There have been huge roadblocks along the way, but they have a clear vision that they were willing to share. This partnership and others with Indigenous clean energy have provided the basis of my research into constructive, collaborative journalism methods within the context of the TRC and Call to Action 86. Inukjuak suffered the effects of environmental racism and colonialist energy policies for far too long. And now they are the authors of their own energy sovereignty story. And they are proving that when there's a will, there's a way, and that clean alternatives exist, not only in principle, but in practice. They are proof that communities can rise up and lead the way. And in particular, Indigenous communities are doing that time and time again from coast to coast to coast. And that is where I see space for journalism in the electrification equation, but not just any journalism. Traditional journalism, yes, is known to be full of negativity, full of cynicism, conflict-based, and sensationalized. For Indigenous communities, from the TRC section on media and reconciliation, this kind of journalism has caused great harm for generations through racist, stereotypical reporting. Journalism has been a big part of the problem, but I believe it can also be a part of the solution. In this space of electrification and clean energy, I see a clear road for collaborative, constructive journalism that builds bridges. And constructive journalism, in and of itself, is a movement that goes beyond breaking news, goes beyond investigative journalism to, quote, vigorously report on possible solutions to important social issues. And the goal, according to the Constructive Journalism Institute based in Copenhagen, is to help the public form an accurate picture of the world that they live in, not a simplistic one. So it is forward-thinking, it is inclusive, it is collaborative and contextualized. It is bridging, not polarizing. So it's an approach that demands a rethinking, and this is what I really love, of how reporters fulfill their democratic and societal roles. And it's within these principles that I have centered my own work, focusing on amplifying Indigenous collective action on climate change. To me, presents an opportunity to constructively report on one of the biggest problems of our time. And it's also an opportunity to change the narrative of the past and to build bridges between non-Indigenous people and Indigenous people as a robust response to the TRC calls to action on media and reconciliation. So this is the focus of the research program I have developed at Concordia University, and it is the perspective that I bring to the leadership team of Voltage. When I was first brought onto the project, I must admit I was a little perplexed about where a journalism expert fit into a room full of engineers. I started reading a lot about energy policy, and I came across a great paper put out by the Public Policy Forum that articulated what Canada will need to address skyrocketing energy demands in the future. So everything from, as you would imagine, clear public policy, R&D, to technology implementation. But it was when they started talking about capturing the public imagination along the grand journey to a cleaner, healthier future. That is where I saw the role of constructive journalism practices, the role of helping people understand where we have been in order to clearly see the road ahead, and the importance of acknowledging the effect of colonialism not only on the social fabric of society, but also within the sciences. Context is everything. Which brings me back to Inukjuak and the resilience of their community members. The interview Simeone gave me would prove to be one of his last. He passed away just 5 months after our visit to Inukjuak. And in consultation with his widow, Alice, we edited his video with archival and other images to create the short documentary Simeone Nalukturuk in his own words, and his stories live on. I feel the ongoing energy sovereignty story of Inukjuak is a gift, and it makes me hopeful, which is a powerful thing. And after all, hope has been described as one of the most powerful sources of energy known to humankind. And for real, sustainable electrification, we need that kind of energy too. Thank you.
So I was taking notes because I learned a lot. And I want to start by thanking Emma, Jarratt, that this is a movement, a reimagined society and way of living all over the world. To Dr. Karim Zaghib, you are a doctor, it's in your title, just for the record, remind your dad, but yeah, I know. But I mean, the power of storage and connecting research to the real world. In the real world, look around, it's all about people. Phil DeLuna, how to electrify the unelectrifiable. I love that you have a trademarked 5-point plan, but you're encouraging us to steal it and use it. And decarbonization, to think of it as oil and gas in reverse, and that there's an opportunity for skills training and training there, which is great. Daniel Breton, job transition. Mis and disinformation. Wow, 50. I think you really captured the audience there. But your line, cut the crap. That was the line that really cut through. Nick Martin, viable ways to eliminate emissions from our homes. And if you're not in a position, so many not in a position to buy or impact a home, to learn to talk about it, even if it irks our partners. And Chris Henderson, the importance of a people agenda and highlighting that we need to put that in place pronto and that we can take our lessons. There are so many from Indigenous peoples. And then Aphrodite, Salas, building on that, highlighted community solutions, case studies, that we have these stories in front of us and we can learn and collaborate if we come together. A round of applause for our talkers this evening. Right now, I'm going to invite our talkers to stand up and make their way out to the reception so they get a head start so that they can catch their breath and grab a drink. So please do that. Don't be shy. And as they do that, I'm going to tell the rest of our audience in the room and in person, just go ahead. I give you permission. You're not being rude. We want you to be able to get a drink into reception first. I'm going to tell the rest of the audience a bit more about the Walrus. If you enjoyed tonight's event, we have another one coming up with Concordia on Tuesday, April 30th. We will be in Ottawa. You can also tune in online through our live stream. This is for the Walrus Talks Cultural Futures. So part of our ongoing work with Concordia is exploring these topics of the moment. This event will bring together 7 cultural leaders, and they're going to be taking a look at AI and the arts in Canada. We encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. You can do that when we follow up by email. You can opt in. We also have a table outside if you're here with us in person, and we'll set you up. Also, subscribe to The Walrus. We have a special offer for those of you in the room. Just for you, a full year subscription to The Walrus. That's 8 issues delivered straight to your door for just $25. That special is available at the Walrus table. The Walrus is home to Canada's community-supported conversation. That means that our journalism and our events are made possible by people like you. Unlike other journalism organizations, some were mentioned this evening, the Walrus is uniquely a registered charity with an educational mandate. Our independent, fact-checked journalism is powered by donations from our community of supporters so that we can give everyone access, really, that they deserve to reporting and conversations that matter. If you'd like to ensure that we can continue doing this work and producing events like this one, consider supporting our work with a donation. You can visit us at thewalrus.ca/supporter or come by the table outside. All gifts of $20 or more receive a charitable tax receipt. Thanks again to the incredible team at Concordia University for making these talks possible and bringing us together. Thank you as well to our annual sponsors, Air Canada, Inspire, RBC, Emerging Artists, Rogers, and Via Rail Canada. And thank you all for being a part of this and for being a part of the Walrus community. I look forward to continuing this electrifying conversation. Have a great night.